In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation, your YouTube show that reviews adaptations from one form to another form. This week, we've got a returning guest. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing just fine. Looking forward to this evening's discussion.
I am too. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We're getting there to the end of the season. One more episode to go. Max, why don't you tell us about this episode?
Well, this is episode 12, The Monster and the Rocket, directed by Robert Lieberman, who is known for Fire in the Sky, Falling Skies, and D3 Mighty Ducks.
Oh, some masterpieces there.
Yeah. You'll notice at least two of those had aliens. Written by Mark Fergus, who's been we've seen him write several of these episodes so far.
He's a showrunner.
Yep. And basically, in this episode, Discovery pushes Naomi and Holden apart and sets the Rossi crew against each other.
Ooh. What'd you gentlemen think of this week's episode?
I liked it.
Towards the end of season 2, this is one of the really good ones as far as a couple of storylines. So I really like this one. Really like it.
I'm pretty happy with it too. There's a lot that's not in the book, but changes need to be made, and these changes actually seem to have worked for me pretty well. It's not always the case. They don't always work, but for the most part, I'd say they work more often than they don't. So I've been pretty happy. All right.
Well, our first discussion or question of the night is, of all the changes from the source material, what are some you enjoyed and what are some you disliked?
I'll let you guys start. Mitch?
Well, okay. There's a few I've noted, but one of the overarching ones is the method of escape from Ganymede that is shown versus how it was described in the book. And the way it was shown in the series, I think, was so much better than what if they did a straight adaptation from the book. Would have been boring as all get out. So what they did, the way they did it, I thought added so much tension and action, and it was great. It was just a great change that they made there.
It gave some dramatic storytelling, that's for sure. This episode. What were you saying, Max?
Oh, I said I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one thing that really stood out for me. One of the other changes I thought was rather interesting was the character Kotyar. And what we have in the book, he's just the head flunky of her security detail versus...
And a lot older, I think, too.
Yeah, I don't remember much about that, but he was the head of her security detail once they were airborne and going to visit Mal. And in the series, he is a fundamental character for him. In fact, he basically replaces the assistant that she has in the books.
Yeah. Soren.
And I'm sure we'll get into Soren a little later, but I thought that was a really that's a good change as far as I'm concerned. The Soren story, I felt just a little short in the books in my mind. I think they could have done a little better with it, but I thought that change though for Kotyar. Stepping them up, as it were, really made a big difference.
I'd rather have Kotyar Ghazi than Soren any day. Soren's kind of annoying. I'm glad we don't have to deal with Soren. his although there is something to be said about that little bit of a storyline that Bobby had following him that one time, busting him, being a spy. But it was all unnecessary for a TV show, that's for sure. None of that was needed for this show, and proved me right, because as far as I'm concerned, these last few episodes, actually most of the season seems to work pretty well without having Soren involved. So I don't mind his absence at all. Max, how about changes that you might have liked or disliked?
I was trying to think. Trying to remember her name. Part was Shora. I know they changed some stuff around in that, and I'm kind of on the fence whether I liked or disliked those changes. I can't remember if Mao was actually on the ship in the books. I want to say he wasn't. He was?
No, he was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember, because I remember she was like isolated in the cabin. And I couldn't remember if that was before or after the meeting.
Those two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was under the impression that he was going to go with her to the outer planets, the Jupiter AO area. And then he dropped the bomb that, oh no, you're going, not me. Yeah.
It's been a while since I read those chapters, and know there's something off about what was going on there, and why she was there was slightly different, I want to say.
Well, actually, the reason she was there was a little different, but the main difference for her right then and there is that she felt that she would no longer had any kind of control. And because she knew she was stepping into a trap, and once she got in it, she realized, yes, I'm really in this, I'm in it deep. And it's interesting because she's able to communicate this by educating Bobby and filling her in on the fact that, yes, politically, this is how it works. I'm not in danger of my life because politically it doesn't work for them. And, they're much better off sticking me on a ship like this and then just sending me out and, eventually cutting off communication. So I'm useless. And that was the concern, the main concern she had in the story in the book versus how confident she was in the series.
Yeah. All I know is we're finally getting the Bobby Avasarala stuff that made me love those two characters to begin with. When I first started watching the TV show, and anytime we get the interaction of those two characters, I'm happy, whether it's on TV or in the books. The Avasarala, Bobby Draper, the team up is just, it's too much fun. However, whatever is going on, even the stuff in the book when they're, scenes with the two of them, they're all some of my favorite scenes that I'll be reading that week. So, yeah, I really like that with the two of them. I liked the way this episode did the whole thing with, the air running out on Ganymede and, all these refugees wanting to get off, and none of that we had in the book, but I kind of liked it because I'll give a little spoiler for later in this video. One of my favorite moments and my favorite acting comes from that whole storyline. So I'm pretty happy with that change. I'd have to say.
And the one other big change I think is in the show, we get a lot of Sadavir, which we do not get in the books at all. I mean,
no.
The only time we see Sadavir is when he's on the other end of the phone talking to Officer Aura. So, I mean, he is up front. Yeah. Even though that first scene with the son was cringeworthy, but that is one of the huge differences, is that we get a lot of Sadovir, and some of it very good.
I think the only point in the books where we see him in person is at the summit meeting when the Martians and the UN meet, and Bobby's sitting there and she's all getting impatient. She refers to him as the moon face guy, and she wasn't sure who was in charge, him or the grandmother, someone's grandmother in a yellow sari. So yeah, I really like the Sean Doyle performances as Ehrenreich. I'm really just always happy to see him on screen. Can't stand the character, but his performances are just so good that I'm happy that all the more they give to Ehrenreich, keep him on screen. He's great. But
well, that kind of leads me to another sort of change with like his character, Ehrenreich. Is in the book, there's no question what kind of guy he was. In the show, they were really making you wonder, like, was he just a stooge? Was he really complicit, or was he being, misled? Was he, there are all kinds of misdirection and sympathy cards are playing with him. And this episode, we really find out, yes, he is that kind of guy.
Well, boy.
Yeah, he is.
He's not just a helpless stooge that was like, oh, I was, following Mao.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's the architect of his own downfall. So,
well, if we're ready to move on or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Question 2. How well did the show interpret the appearance and nature of the costumes, props, scenery, and creatures, both practical and VFX? And what do you feel about the music?
Music-wise, I just want to start there. I think the music was great. The show, that's one of the strong suits this show has, is usually its music is pretty good, because I noticed that I very rarely ever notice the music. It's only when I've seen an episode god-awful number of times that I really start paying attention to the music more often. And this evening, my last viewing before we started the discussion, I was really digging the music. I was sitting back and paying attention to that. I haven't checked out the soundtracks, but I think I might, because of tonight paying attention to it.
Well, speaking of music and Ehrenreich, they had just talked about leaving that, was it the concert or the opera, and saying that Earth has better music because of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm thinking back, did we even hear any of that music? I don't think we did. That supposed better, the better
opera, no.
Yeah, like the better Earth music, but we never actually heard it.
We have heard Earth music.
No, I meant in this episode. He was saying,
right,
oh, it's so much better, but yet we didn't actually hear it.
No,
they just skipped right to them. Yeah,
the opera that CD or whatever it was that he gave to Korshunov was The Rise and Fall of the City of Mahogany. Yeah. And it's an opera. And I guess the main issue, I'm not familiar with it at all, but from doing minor research, it basically is supposed to be a critique of either the United States or the Weimar Republic's societal decadence, and that's what it's supposed to be about. I did not get a chance to listen to it.
There's irony in that. Question. There's irony in that, because just the scene before that, they were all dealing with this lack of oxygen on the station, everyone dying, and then it cuts to this decadent scene of people leaving an opera.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think the Russian Prime Minister said that it was, or First Minister, or whatever his title was, said that was his favorite opera. If his interpretation is that it's about Earth, yeah, they are pretty decadent. At least that's the Martian view of Earth. So that really fits it.
And you have to remember that he does, when they're talking, like a scene or two later, he does go on about the fact that Mars is trying to make itself a new Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is their task. So
Yeah,
I can imagine why they would admire some things about Earth.
definitely.
Let's see.
Costumes and props and all that kind of stuff. It, as always, this show has just been top notch on it. VFX, I think, except for one shot, and just like a couple weeks ago, there was one shot that was bad. There's a shot in this one. It's after they cut away from the shot. You know, we've got them sitting in the lifter. You know, they're dropship going up into orbit. And then it cuts away from Bobby sitting there, you know, everybody's shaking. Bobby's starting to smile. It cuts away to an outside space shot, and you see it just, you know, the ship flying along. And it looked to me like something out of Dune 1984 with the quality of CG that shot had. It looked bad, that shot, you know, as you see this shuttle or whatever you want to call it flying across while there's the whole radio, you know, thing going on about them going into high Earth orbit. Hotel Echo, Oscar. I had to think for a second there. It's been so long since I've had to use it, but yeah, I actually, the first time I watched it, I had to actually figure out what HEO was. I'm like, oh, high Earth orbit, because all we ever have, all of our spacecraft, except for the ones that have gone to the moon, you know, all of our stuff is in low Earth orbit, except for anything that's at geosynchronous orbit, which is even further out than high Earth orbit. But you know, we think of that stuff as, you know, like the space shuttle and the International Space, you know, space station is, you know, orbiting at a really high, you know, altitude. That's still considered low Earth orbit, and that surprises a lot of people when they learn that. But yeah, other than that one shot, I think the CG was good as usual.
I particularly like the scene where Alex is like moving the screen in front of him. But I will say that prop wise, when he's turning in his chair, when he stops, you can literally see like wobble.
Really?
Oh,
And I'm looking at that. Yeah, he'd stop and he'd see it like wobble.
That kind of made sense, maybe, because it's supposed to be on a gimbal, because at the slightest change in vector when under thrust, it's supposed to rotate, tilt, and tip and all that to keep itself directly under you, so you
I know,
don't
it just looked
fall
like
out the side.
it looked like an unstable desk chair to me. So I'm watching
it is
it like
unstable.
in general, like it looked like it's ready to snap off on him. Because like he's sitting there and hitting a button like rotate the chair around to talk to Holden.
Was that the shot from like Holden's point of view looking up?
Yep.
And that's when he spins around. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So like they weren't actually doing anything in the ship wise. It was like he's just sitting, hitting their button, and the chair spins and stops. It looks like it wobbles. And to me, that just kind of looked like a cheap prop.
Loose.
All right.
You know, last thing you want to do is hit that like 4G mark and have your chair fly against the wall.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to bring up two things here. I think they fit. It's for the costumes. When Sadovir is talking to his son, or when they first go to sit down, a woman with a tie-dye walks by. And
tie-dye will never die.
I thought you'd like that. The other one was, I thought the uniforms of the crew on the
Shunsen?
Goshian or
Goshian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have it written down somewhere here. The Gonshiyin. Yeah. The Gonshiyin.
Okay.
I thought the uniforms were sharp, simple, but sharp. I thought that looked pretty good. Also, all the interior shots of that ship, beyond that luxurious room, but just the hallways, or it's not hallways, what in the world do you call them? But I thought they looked really sharp, clean. kind of what you'd expect from a multi-trillionaire.
Yeah.
Speaking
This
of
was
sharp,
good.
in the book, wasn't his ship described as like kind of like round and softed on edges? Or am I mistaking that?
I don't remember.
I know it had like an incredible painting on the outside, which Bobby thought was really silly. But
I felt like it had a lot of like unused, or not unused space, but like a waste of space inside, which is the exact opposite what you want to typically do. So like you have
they talked about the high ceilings and things like that. Yes.
And I want to say like there was round rooms or something, which is something you typically wouldn't do because it wastes more space unless like your whole ship is round. But
yeah.
I thought there was something like that. I had to go back and read it, but it just feels like there's something like that going on.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a decadent ship. Yeah.
I'm trying to think here. Timeline wise, in the book and where Sarala is and Bobby on the ship versus Ganymede, pretty sure these events are way out of sync at this point.
Yes.
Especially when we have what we know is going to probably happen, I believe, the last episode.
Yeah,
with
as
Venus.
I remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the adventures on the Rossi that actually follow this this episode occur concurrently with the Avasarala timeline that we have in this episode. So yeah, there is a time shift there, but I don't think it's that important.
Yeah. You know, that said, it's crazy to think when the season started, Miller was still alive.
Yeah.
Like thinking about it, it's like it feels like this is 2 seasons in one. They easily could have had that mid-season break, and it could have easily been a second completely different season.
Yeah, because we split off into CALIBAN'S War like 4 episodes ago, 5 episodes ago.
A little over the
like
halfway
after
mark.
episode 7, yeah.
And there is a lot of exposition. Artwork. There is a lot of exposition in this book. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that could be shown quickly. And the unimportant things have obviously been dropped. So, you know, they are moving right along through the book, without a doubt.
Definitely. They do plow right through a lot of stuff. So, next question.
Sure. Question 3. How well written was the dialogue? Did it adapt the dialogue from the book well? And did the actors deliver those lines well?
I think that the dialogue's been pretty good. I mean, you can never directly adapt text from a book into dialogue because with very few books out there, because most people don't talk the way people talk in books. Most people don't talk the way they talk on TV either, but TV is a lot closer to reality than books. And, you know, so you have to change it to make it feel natural, like natural dialogue. But I think it's done a pretty good job, and the actors have been top notch on it the whole way. At least I think.
You know, I like the dialogue exchange, particularly the end of Naomi's sequence events in this episode. Between her and that guy in the dock.
Champa. Big guy Champa.
His line of, "You're not done yet."
Right.
And he sounds like he's choking back tears when he says it too.
Oh yeah.
You know, because, you know, I would be too. He knows by putting her on and telling her that he's pretty much sacrificing himself. You know, they don't have much hope of surviving.
Well, she had just said that, you know, she survived the Eros, you know, and that she didn't do enough. And she was going to let him take a spot because she survived once. But, you know, you got to keep going.
Yeah.
I think
That's
that was his
exactly-
way of getting out of being like her, guilty of Eros. So he's gonna
One
keep
thing
stacking the guilt on her.
One thing they seem to have forgotten is he already had a spot.
Hmm.
He was guaranteed first class berth, as the way Melissa put it, and maybe two. You know, he shouldn't have been one of the ones to have to give up a seat, but he chose to stay back.
Yeah.
You know, I think he went. You know, when he was counting off the 52 people, I think he gave up his seat during doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he, you know, that's when he made that decision. And
Yeah, his verbiage
Yeah.
on that was, "You're not finished yet,"
Mm-hmm.
was exactly what he said. Yeah. I
Yeah,
noted
just
that
great.
as a critical line.
yeah, it is definitely a great line. Very critical to the episode, as you put it.
Yeah. Now on the dialogue, I had one thing that I mentioned it earlier. Sadavir's conversation with his son. It does set up something a little later, but it is just horrid. I
Yeah.
hate listening to that sequence altogether. It's just, it's true. If you feel it in your heart,
I
come on.
dislike the opening 5 minutes or so of the episode, because I'll bring this up in a few minutes, or I'll bring it up now instead of waiting. My least favorite scene is him shaving. I don't like shaving scenes. I think they're just, especially it always happens. Very few times have I ever seen a shaving scene in a movie or a TV show, and they don't nick themselves. It's like you know almost as soon as you see a guy shaving that he's going on a movie or a TV show that he's going to nick his cheek, his chin, or his throat.
Quick question: did Miller nick himself when he was shaving? And
I think he did.
with Diogo there, and
I think he did.
okay,
I'd have to go back and look, but if not, it's one of those few cases where they don't. But I do think he did.
So you bring up a shaving scene, and the first thing I'm thinking of is like, you got to go walk back and watch Deadwood and Sweargen. Al Sweargen. And, that kind of is out of my memory, because I'm thinking, I want to get Alice Laura and Al Sweargen in the same room to see who can swear the most.
That's just too much.
Well,
My ears wouldn't be able to handle it. I'm innocent, y'all. I can't handle that much swearing. No.
Love
I
it.
still have to go
I
back
feel
and
like
watch that.
put him like in a
movie.
church or something, so they're just gonna keep ramping it up.
Yep.
Wow. Max, you're one twisted man.
Hey, you'd watch that movie.
Hell, I went to see a movie just because there was a massive fight in a church.
I had noted for dialogue Champa's entire speech to the crowd. We are belters, and going on about life is hard and such. I thought the actor did a killer job on that. And it's certainly not in the books, but
No.
boy, that was a great addition. And he presented it so well. The
actor's
thrilled.
name is Grogu Deep Singh. I'm hoping I pronounced his first name Grogu correctly. I checked with some people, but they weren't sure.
I had one other thing on the dialogue. Actually, it was just a particular line. It's 2 words. When they're hunting the protomolecule monster, and Holden comes out with the greatest name, Plant Guy.
Oh, yes.
I thought that. Don't give me that kind of crap, Plant Guy. I thought that was just.
Don't talk down to me. I think it was. Don't talk down to me.
Oh, that just absolutely kills me still. I love that little bit.
Definitely. So move on to next.
Scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Question 4. What is a scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, and or hated in this episode? For me, the scene I most remembered and enjoyed was actually that one I mentioned before with Naomi, when the guy was saying that line. Like,
Yeah.
that was probably the best scene in this episode I can think of.
From the moment he gave that speech.
When he
Pretty
basically
much.
pushed her back into the ship.
Yeah. From those 2 moments, from giving his little speech and the doors opening up to him telling, goodbye.
Yeah.
It wrecked me. It wrecked me every time I watched it. I was getting super emotional watching it, and I did have tears in my eyes a couple of those times watching it, because it's a well-written scene. It's well directed, well choreographed, but most especially well acted on the part of that guy, of Grogu Deep Sing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that one
Did you
always
have a
brought
different
tears to
one?
my eyes.
Yeah.
Mine, it's actually a two-parter. It has to do with Kochar and Bobby. There's the one scene where they're in Officer Alla's office, and Kochar or Bobby's wandering around. Kochar walks in, and she goes to parade rest when he walks in. So she stands tall, hands behind, and they have that quick little conversation. So you kind of get a little banter going there. And then later, when they're on the shuttle, there's the banter between them while Officer Alla is there. I hate flying. And I think those two bits really do a great job of establishing a quick relationship between the two of them. So
Yeah.
I was really, really pleased with how they worked that out.
Especially after the way, they interacted with each other last episode. Him staring at her and her going, "What the fuck are you looking at?"
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're not going to get along. And then the next week, they're just talking smack now. Okay.
Well, the next week she's calling his gun adorable. Which
Yeah.
I
Well, when you consider what she used for a firearm, that is pretty adorable.
True. And let's see. The other one, I already brought up the other one, Sadavar and his son, how much I hated that. Oh, one of the greatest scenes. Officer Alla stepping out of the shuttle and into the ship, Mao's ship. Just my AIDS. Just priceless as far as I'm concerned.
So Max, did you have
I
favorite?
The
How about
Naomi
least
thing.
favorite?
Least favorite? No. The one thing I will say on like the whole Bobby and Eversolaw Solara part on this episode, in the book we got a lot of interplay between those two before they actually went up, and it was kind of made very clear to Bobby that Eversolara's specialty is politics. Like, this is what she is. And I feel like them kind of leaving this out with Bobby, like, we know Eversolar is all about politics, like that's her specialty. But Bobby's character hasn't really got that education from her yet. And one of the greatest scenes in the book, I thought, was when basically Bobby says, like, this is my specialty now, when she dons her power armor suit. And we're getting that here soon, I believe.
Right.
And it's like, we kind of miss that interaction of like, Ellis thing is politics, not fighting. And then Bobby finally gets a chance to show her specialty off of knocking heads. And we still get that, but we don't get Bobby like being able to brag as much. If that makes sense.
Yeah, we haven't really seen the relationship develop not to the extent, but not even the type of relationship that they have in the book hasn't even had a chance to start, because Bobby has no real reason to have much in the way of positive feelings towards Avasarala yet. I mean, other than being the only one to have told her the truth about the monster she saw in Ganymede. They haven't had any sort of bonding moment yet.
Well, I mean, in the book too, we got the whole interaction of Bobby, this giant lady, is being basically, cowed by this tiny little lady. She's powerless against this tiny little creature that is just
someone's
destroying her at politics.
Well, and in the books, not only does that happen, but Avasarala is also educating her at the same time. And for the sake of the show, I think the education isn't required.
Yeah.
Or needed in most ways, because what Bobby does is what Bobby does best. And that's just be a badass.
Yeah. It's not like we need to see her have any political training.
Yeah.
So
you see Bobby with her pinky in the air.
It'd still be nice to be able to see some of that interaction of here she is completely powerless because of politics, and understanding that, Avasarala is just the master of that. And she has no game in that field. She's worse at it than Holden.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless the politics is punching someone in the teeth, then she's
Holden wants to be honest, and you can't be honest in politics, for goodness sakes.
True. I love that line when Holden tells Alex to give him an open line, and Alex was like, "Here we go again." It's like, I'm like, "Oh, damn, nice one, Alex. We're doing this again."
Yeah.
It's like, what happened last time you did a broadcast there, Jim? I don't think it went too well. Didn't like a whole war start because of you?
Well, and that kind of leads me into a character, and I think, I believe this is probably your next question. If you want to ask it formally.
Sure. So question 5. Who do you call the best to worst actor and or best casting, worst casting? You can choose up to 3 people.
And first of all, I this isn't about who was the best. This has to do with one of the characters. And Holden. Holden turns into Darth Holden in this episode.
Yeah.
Some of the shots that they have of him, he's leaning over that console and he ends up looking up over his left shoulder. And the angle, the lighting, the whole 9 yards. This man is someone you don't want to screw with at this particular point in time. Mm-hmm. You have how he's berating Alex. Are you on a fly or not? He's coming down and he's saying, yay or nay. If it's nay, get your butt out of here. I'm going to fly and I'm going to do everything myself. I mean, he is Darth Holden at this point. And we've seen him at an extreme, but not like this. This was just, I thought he did that whole thing so well.
In the book, he does kind of go off the rocker, about the protomolecule being on Ganymede.
And I was going to mention that, like, when they were on Ganymede, he was pretty obsessed about it being there. And he's kind of getting PTSD type stuff going on with the paranoia about it being everywhere. So it's like, I feel like they transferred that to the ship and the monster.
Yeah. But Jim in the book is also freaking out thinking that Fred Johnson did this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Fred did this. And I'm like, why does Holden not grasp the concept that there might have been protomolecule samples spread out around the solar system long before the Canterbury was even blown up. Like, it could have gone in 30 directions before they blew up the can, and Holden would know, but all of a sudden, if a protomolecule sample showed up somewhere, it's Fred Johnson's fault. Whoever's the convenient person for him to blame, the person that he gave the stuff to, he's just, he in both cases, especially in the book scenario, where he's trying to blame it on Fred, it just, my God, it's some of the stupidest things he's ever said in the entire series. And that's even counting some of the stupid BS he says in later books. Because Holden's pretty good at saying
I think it's because
BS.
He wanted to believe so severely that he had gotten rid of all the protomolecule except that which fell into Venus. And he had, that was his task back then. And he had to have succeeded. The only way he couldn't, or it could be out there, is because he knows Fred's got some.
Yeah.
I think the concept, someone else may have had it, it got spread early or something like that, it's like the Indians seeing the Spaniards show up in their ships. Something he just can't imagine.
Yeah. It doesn't fit the narrative that he wants to believe in. So,
yeah.
What was the one episode called? Paradigm Shift?
Sounds right.
Yep. Episode 6, Paradigm Shift, which is literally that.
Did you have any other actors?
Oh, I've got actually, I think some of the supporting actors that we had in this one were really good. Though it was short, Jeff Seymour as Korshunov.
Okay.
He actually gave a very realistic death scene. Sometimes death scenes are so bad. I thought his was good. I thought he did a good job. And then Valerie Buhagiar played Melissa, the owner of the Somnambulist. She did a good job. I mean,
she did
so believable. Just so believable.
She was my number 4. She's my number 4. I'll do the other 3 in a minute here.
Okay.
I'd say, for me, I'd have to put Champa and Naomi as my number 1 and 2.
Okay. I put Grogu Singh as my number 1. My number 2 is Nick E. Terabay as Kothar Ghazi. I just love the character. I have so much fun watching him. And I think Nick Terabay does a pretty good job. And then my other actor, I don't always call her out, and I really ought to call her out more often. Dominique Tipper as Naomi. So I'm with you on that one, Max. I just put her in my 3rd place. So, any other thoughts on actors, or anybody else's thoughts on other actors? All right.
If anything, I would just say I'm surprised that Shora hasn't done the audiobooks for these. Okay. Question 6 of the themes present in this episode. Which ones got your attention? What did you think about those themes? Are developed to the books or events happening in real life?
I'll let you gents start.
Yeah. The only thing I could pick up was betrayal. There's several things. I mean, Bobby has betrayed the Martian Congressional Republic, and in the first go between her and Kotyar, that's the first thing he asks her: "Are you in the habit of betrayal?" So that's a biggie. In the books, Soren is betraying Avasarala, and that it's not carried over into the show itself, but That's a level of betrayal. And Sadavir's, if you want to call it betrayal, he calls it Earth First, but it's betrayal of trust that he has between himself and Avasarala, not betrayal of him against the Earth. And then to a lesser extent in the Rossi crew, perhaps you could think of Naomi stabbing Amos with a needle, a betrayal of sort. That's stretching it, but I think that is the one thing that I really pulled from this particular episode.
If you want to go with betrayal, you have Holden basically betraying the trust of the crew with his, manhunt.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned Bobby betraying Mars, but in a way, their leaders betrayed her and her generation.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's a perspective thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which side of the street are you on, in essence? Yeah.
Aaron Wright, probably betrayed his kid.
He's betraying the laws of the planet at the least.
Mhm.
At the least, he's betraying the laws. And he knew about it, otherwise he wouldn't have, he knew that was the case. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done his damnedest to keep it secret, including telling Mao that he has to basically come home alone, So, yeah. I definitely think he would know.
The only really themes I thought about were we have the sacrifice with Champa, with Naomi on the ship. Naomi's trying to sacrifice herself. Holden's trying to sacrifice his crew to get off this monster.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Aaron Wright's trying to, sacrifice Avasarala to save his own ass.
Right.
He sacrificed that other guy a little bit directly there.
With
Now,
sacrifice,
what do you think?
I was going to also
Go
mention
ahead.
the doctor. I'm trying to remember what his name was because he's barely in this episode. Prax. Like he's
Prax.
almost like
Oh.
sacrificing his daughter at this point. He's had to sacrifice his hunt for her because, where'd she go?
In the books, he's trying to talk himself into the fact that she is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that.
I was actually going to mention earlier is we see Prax in the early parts of the episode, he just kind of disappeared at the end of the episode. Especially when they were fighting the monster in space. I think he was there for a couple scenes and disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, he stopped talking after a bit.
Well, he had pulled that the memory card or whatever from the glass enclosure, and all through the fight, or not through the fight, but the early parts of the Rossi scenes, he was always trying to decrypt or go through all of those notes. And then, he comes up and he sees the picture of his daughter. And, that's when he starts saying, that could be my daughter, and we'll shut up, plant guy. And we get that whole bit. Yeah. But
She's not your daughter anymore.
Yeah.
It just seemed
but the sacrifice is definitely there in the books, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seemed like in the show that he was there in spits and spurts and just kind of faded away as unimportant.
He was there. He was there right next to Holden the entire time. You don't hear him say anything. Other things I'll add with sacrifice. All those belters, were there were belters sacrificing the spot to let kids and the young, young men and young women and children to go on ahead of them.
Yeah.
And then also you have Bobby and Cody are both kind of starting to sacrifice themselves by throwing themselves in front of Avasarala when the guns got drawn. there at the end, they both like got her behind, they both, that's their instinct to do, is to put themselves between any guns and her. And I really like, I noticed that. Did you have anything else, Max?
I think that's pretty much all I got.
The big one that I got was family. Starting with Sadavir writing the letter to his wife and talking to his son. So Sadavir, well, ex-wife, I think is the impression I got.
Yeah.
But still there with his son. You've got Prax and his focus on May. That's his continued focus on May. You got all those parents out on Ganymede sending their kids first onto the somnambulist. They falls into it, sacrifice, but they also fall under family. This is a little stretch because Kodiar mentions that the reason why he's working for Avasarala is because he got her son killed. So that's where family comes into play there with him. And then Alex, what was it that got out? That Alex said that got Holden to finally give up his hunt for this monster. Our family needs us now. And that was enough. Holden, all right. Alex was able to get through. He knew exactly what to say that would get through to Holden.
Well, the funny thing is when Alex says that and you have that reaction shot from Holden, he's not looking like he wants to give up.
No.
It's that they leave it with the question in your mind, which I thought was lovely.
Yeah. Making amends is another. This one's a little bit on the edge here. Starting out with Sadavir, they're supposed to be making amends. At least that's what Avasarala is trying to talk him into doing by going in front of the General Assembly or the Security Council, to come clean, tell it all, tell your, the other example of making amends is Naomi and Amos going to fix the somnambulist. Yeah, they were doing it to help people, get away, but the fact that they were doing that for Melissa was still a form of making amends. Yeah. Whether that was their intent behind it or not. We already did sacrifice. The only other one I got here was, and I'm sure you'll see this with at least one person, single-minded obsession. Holden, single-minded. It's in both the book and in the show. First hand of the proto-molecule, and that's all he could think about. There's nothing else for him to even take into consideration except there's the proto-molecule here. I got to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Of course, the other character who has single-minded obsession, and they are absolutely justly doing so, is Prax, obsessing about finding May. I would hope he would be single-mindedly obsessed.
I was going to mention, if you're talking about obsession like that, Aaron Wright would fall into that category.
Yeah. Both for, getting getting some kind of weapon for Earth to have to be, to fight against Mars.
Well, he's also doing it to save his own ass by pitting Mao and Avasarala, and all that's going to happen there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
There was another case of single-minded obsession that I thought of the other day, and I didn't write it down or type it in something.
Naomi's single-mindedly obsessed with getting everybody safe.
That is it. Thank you.
Yeah.
She is mother hen that way. We've got a mother and father hen on board that ship.
Amos was obsessed with saving Naomi's ass against herself.
Well,
And
Until
what
she trained him.
it's- yeah, he was interested in saving his own ass right there. Yes, hers too, but mostly his own.
I'd say it was about
because-
saving her ass from herself because she was the one to open the gate to let everybody in.
Yeah, but he thought as soon as the gate opened, everybody'd get in and kill everybody on board.
Yeah, to include Naomi.
Anyhow,
And it would have,
But-
and it would have turned into a free for all. But
yeah,
you know, luckily
Especially
you've
with
got
that-
two sets of doors.
yeah,
Yeah,
just and thank goodness Champa clocked that one dude, the one who from the beginning of the episode was just an annoyance there at the door, the gates to that ship.
and he did a great
that
job
birth.
for that part too. He really did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
give me that. I'll get her to
And then
talk.
he got clocked by Amos, and then his buddy behind him had the balls to throw a punch at Amos. He got a punch in on Amos. Amos went down. Well, I can't tell if he went down, but he went back. And
Yeah.
it was Champa comes along, picks him up, and just slams him to the ground. The guy
Yeah.
didn't have a line of dialogue, but he got to throw a punch and got body slammed. I have a suspicion he was a stuntman.
Another guy who
Stuntman.
didn't get a line of dialogue was that one fella looked like he was from the subcontinent. His wife got on, but he got stopped.
He did have a line.
He did
think
a
he said-
wonderful job of, you know,
Yeah.
that, oh God, not release, but, you know, that grief, but
Yeah.
it's like, I must do this. And, oh God, I thought he did a great job. And then, of
I
course, you
think
get a
he
nice
might have
shot
had
of
a line
him.
dialogue in the first scene on the docks there when we first before
Okay.
Naomi and Amos came up, because I remember him and his woman, his whether I don't know wife or girlfriend, the two of them came up to Melissa like really early on, like right after the guy who's an asshole. And then I think it was that guy, then these two, you know, but
Okay.
yeah, because he says we don't have much script. Was the one line I just remembered
Ah.
the line. We don't have much script. It's his wife. I don't know that had any lines.
And then he got
But-
that great bit at the end through the window with Champa.
Yeah, that whole sequence just it's hard to watch sometimes. Yeah, until you get inured to it after the fifth time in one weekend.
Yeah.
You know,
I've
going
literally
back,
watched it 5 times since Friday.
You know, going back
And
to the
it's some
theme
of those, I'm sorry,
Uh,
go ahead.
So I was saying, going back to the theme of obsession, we do have Alex and his obsession with like this computer trying to figure whatever he's trying to figure out. Like he was spending hours and hours with machine, like he's believing the AI is like a person at this point.
Yeah.
Because he talks to her.
And
Yeah.
you know, he was like trying to plot a course or something without doing whatever to get to where he needed to go. But he's like he was obsessed with doing this to solve this mystery.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when the Rosie is going into the Ag Dome and the PDCs pull in, are they doing that automatically, or is he
I think so.
manipulating his girlfriend here?
I think they pulled in automatically because they were about to hit something.
Okay.
And I think they've probably got sensors on that can tell when they're about to clip something. At least that's my guess. I do know that when there's been discussion of why there are no robots in the Expanse, and I brought this up a couple weeks ago, there are robots all over the place. We see drones all over the place on Earth. I think we've seen drones on Mars. And one of the articles I read described all the PDC cannons and the Rossi itself as being like a bunch of robots. You know, so I do
Well,
think that
automation maybe more than robots, but yeah.
You know, there's
so
whether two types of AI. I can't remember which one. I know one's called AGI, and there's another type.
and there's
and-
artificial general intelligence and then weak intelligence.
And I'm not entirely sure which version they have.
Oh, they've got they don't have strong AI, as in has a personality and can sit there and
That we
think
know
and talk
of.
to you. Yeah, it's not in any of the books or in the show. There's no strong AI like that. But
Because I mean, like, there was one comment that Martian guy made about having liver installed. I'm not sure if that was sarcasm or reality.
I think he
think it was
probably did just
reality.
have a new. It's
Yeah.
just the terminal, the way he phrased it. You know, he said installed. You know, kind of like, you know, nope, I need another one of these. Here, take this one out, put a new one in. You know,
But with like sci-fi, it's so hard to tell if he's just being serious, like he just already had one installed, or he's just being like kind of sarcastic and saying, "Give me the drink."
Yeah.
a little bit of both. You know, I'm sure he probably did just have a recently, you know, relatively recently, you know, have a new liver implanted. But, you know, when you do look at the human body as a machine and our organs just as parts, saying installed doesn't seem all that nonsensical. And I get,
No.
Martian view versus
And
Earth
you
view.
do need to break it in.
You know, it does question in the sci-fi setting is like, how advanced are their artificial organs? You know, are they growing them in vats? Are they 3D printed, or are they just mechanical, or all the above?
all three,
Yeah.
depending on the organ involved. It could be any of the three.
One of my thoughts on, like, you know, this whole series, if you think about the space race of people going into space and settling, you would think that Mars, at least the first few generations, would be kind of our best and brightest. Same with the Belters. The original Belters would probably be some of the best and brightest.
Yeah.
Before they kind of started opening up the gates. But like genetic pool wise, how much smarter would they theoretically be if intelligence and genetics is that way compared to Earth? Like, you literally send 3 generations.
Intelligence, I don't think intelligence really has much to do with genetics. Not as much as other things might have to do with genetics. That's more intelligence, or at least how intelligent somebody ends up being in their lifetime is more based on their socioeconomic class than
But
on their
still,
genetics.
it's still the interesting question, like how much of that would be in part of Martian and Belters compared to Earth. I mean, obviously, the technology they're dealing day to day is completely different than Earth day to day.
Sorry,
Amos being a
guys.
rocket scientist.
It's all right.
You know,
No problem.
Amos is
Okay.
a literal rocket scientist, but he's like doesn't think he's that smart.
No.
But that's his day to day.
Yeah, but there's also one other thing to consider is the average 15-year-old 300 years from now, or at least 300 years into this particular future, is probably going to be smarter or know more than the average 15-year-old today. Just like 300 years ago, how much does the average 15-year-old know today compared to what they knew 300 years ago? In a lot of topics, a lot more. Especially
Depends on the
science.
subject.
Especially science. You know, because only the biggest scientists back in the day, 300 years ago, had some of these, you know, theories of stuff that we now know to be, you know, elementary school kids like know that this is the case, where it was only a theory by the smartest people 300 years ago, you know. So yeah, I don't know if I'd say that intelligence really has that much to do with the genetics. And I think it's more of a, you know, with in this series with Mars, I think it's more a case of that there's been this institutionalized education going on here, you know, that started with, you know, the smartest scientist in the solar system teaching kids, and then they became the smartest scientists. You know, that's why Mars is said to, throughout the series, to have so much more science, because it's just been even even the least smart people on Mars were probably smart, and we're probably all scientists. So to a scientist, what's going to matter on raising their kid? Making sure their kid gets an education. A lot more important to a scientist, I think, than, that their kid gets an education than, somebody who's not as nearly as educated. At least,
and then you look at the Belters,
like
they had some of the same type of origins, but in the day, like you're looking at essentially a population of long haul truckers.
Yeah.
And they have like one or two, quote, universities in the belt versus hundreds and thousands and on Mars and the Earth. Yeah.
And like that goes back to the class side that Glenn was talking about.
Yeah, socioeconomic class. I think the biggest university or the best place to get educated off of Earth and Mars in the Expanse would probably be Ganymede. Because I believe that's where Prax got his degree at. Best universities are here.
Yeah.
What was the Prax's daughter reciting to the old guy? Plant names or
plant names, proper plant
the Latin names. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's interesting that the Latin names have carried over for another 300 years.
I don't think that the naming convention for with taxonomy is going to change much. I think that's
wait till 3-4 seasons from now. They are still going to get Belter taxonomy in other areas,
right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen.
And if you follow the books, the taxonomy is going to change even more.
Anybody else have anything else on themes or anything else they want to bring up? Anything from your notes?
Nope, not me.
Let me check my notes.
Yeah. One thing, when Naomi and Amos come back after Amos has had to throw a punch and big guy shoves the guy down.
Right.
Amos comes in and he says something about, I'm going to need a shot, kind of settled me down a bit. He makes a reference to Pimlico. Well, Pimlico is in the northwest section of Baltimore, which is where the racetrack for the second leg of the Triple Crown is run. Pimlico,
Preakness?
it's
Preakness.
Thank you. Yeah. So I gather that is the neighborhood he grew up in.
That would make sense. I do know he is from Baltimore.
Yep. But he mentions that specifically, and he mentions it in the context of it being not a great place to have to be. So, because Naomi had said something about how horrid the situation is, and he said something about, it's not as bad, or it's just as bad as Pimlico, or something like that. So
I'm just thinking, if he grew up in Baltimore, did he know McNulty or anybody like that?
A couple hundred years a little late, but good reference to the best television show of all time, which is hands down The Wire.
But the real question is, would he be hanging out with Omar, or would he be hanging out with the Bell?
Amos, he'd be hanging out with Omar.
I don't know
whistling along with him.
So
The Wire is a great show. I strongly recommend it. I am a science fiction and fantasy nerd, and I rarely watch anything that's not sci-fi and fantasy. I'm a major snob about it. And I had to be talked into watching The Wire. And oh my goodness, it is the best television show of all time. It is my number one favorite show. I've watched it 4 times through now. And I have another watch coming at some point in the next couple of years here. It's been that long.
What network?
HBO.
It was on HBO originally.
Okay.
Yep. And it's definitely worth getting HBO just for a month and sit there and binge watch during a month The Wire, and then cancel your HBO script. It's totally worth that. It's only 5 seasons, 10 episodes per season, I think is what it was. Might have been 8 in some of the seasons. I think I've exhausted all my notes. We still haven't figured out what the rocket referred to in the episode title, The Monster and the Rocket. I kind of think it's the missile that took down the Karakun, but nothing solid
arrows.
has been figured out. Yeah, it could be arrows.
No idea.
So
Uh,
it's still up in the
arrows
air, you
is
guys.
so yesterday. I don't think that would be it. Who knows?
Yeah. So thank you, Mitch, for coming back on. It's been
pleasure.
great having you on. I hope everybody at home is enjoyed to see Over's ears on screen. So good having you with us. Max, thanks for being on again. Everybody at home, thanks for watching. Please come back next week as we discuss episode 213, Caliban's War. Don't forget to be awesome.